Our continued war in Afghanistan. So, Ben, what are you talking about? We just pulled out of Afghanistan. I saw it with my eyeballs. I saw Joe Biden tell people that he's pulling out, and he stood by it, even though the big bad media said he shouldn't do it. What are you talking about? How are we still having a war in Afghanistan? Well, I'm glad you asked. So, the way that we are still doing this is because right after we pulled out, we started sanctioning the country because the Taliban was running it, and we didn't like the way the Taliban was running Afghanistan. By the way, before I go any further, it's important to remember that part of the agreement about pulling out and the Taliban not shooting all of our soldiers in the backs as they left was, hey, you recognize that we're in charge here now, right? We won. You lost. We won. We are going to take control of the country, and we're going to set up ministries, and we're going to have a civil service, and we're going to run the schools and all this other stuff, right? There was an implicit agreement, if not an explicit agreement, that when the US left, the Taliban would take control, right? We weren't intentionally leaving a power vacuum. We even tried to get old regime leaders that we liked to talk to the Taliban to kind of make a conciliatory government, a coalition government. Now, it turns out that wasn't the case. The Taliban staffed the government with its own people, but the truth was they had won, we had lost, they were in control, okay? So that makes it particularly bad then when we go into the world stage as the US and say, well, we're going to sanction Afghanistan because we don't like the Taliban and we don't like what they're doing and we don't like that they rule there. But we're not hurting the Taliban by imposing sanctions on Afghanistan. We are hurting the Afghan people. And I don't know if you know this, but it is winter in the Northern Hemisphere, and Afghanistan falls in the Northern Hemisphere. It is winter right now in Afghanistan, and people are struggling to survive because they don't have resources because essentially their country is being strangled from resources. Recent UN reports have shown that huge numbers, millions and millions of Afghans are on the brink of starvation or have severe food insecurities. And by the way, this is only happening because the United States has said, hey, anyone who touches Afghanistan or tries to help them, we're going to punish your country too. So not only have we said us as the United States are not going to do business with Afghanistan, which by the way would be fine. We don't have to do business with a country. There is nothing stopping us from saying, you know what, we don't like country so-and-so, we're not going to do business with them. Cuba and Venezuela and other countries are great examples of places where the US has just said, we don't want to trade with you, we're not going to deal with you. But when we add the layer of sanctions and say to other nations that if you trade with this country or you help this country out, we're going to sanction you, then it becomes more problematic, right? And that's what's happening in Afghanistan. So even regional players who might want to help Afghanistan or have the resource to help Afghanistan can't do so because as soon as they do, the United States swoops in with their sanctions and hurts them further. And by the way, Afghanistan is not the only place where we have crippling sanctions in place. We also have them in Iran. When we pulled out of the JCPOA or the Iran nuclear deal, one of the things that we did was start sanctioning the country again. And part of that included medicine into Iran. So these types of dangerous and deadly sanctions are kind of American as apple pie here, and it's definitely something that America has continued to do. Now, there is an easy way to help people of Afghanistan. And look, I heard a lot of news coverage in the mainstream media about the Afghan women and children and what were we going to do, and our pulling out was going to make their lives so much more dangerous. Where is all that talk now? Where is all the care about the Afghan women and children? Where is it? I haven't seen any of it on mainstream news. I haven't seen any of it anywhere. Any of the places that were saying, oh my God, the women and children in Afghanistan, dead silent now. Why? Because they don't actually care. If they cared, they would be sincerely worried about the fact that millions of Afghans are suffering from food insecurity and starvation, but they're not. Because the only reason they were worried about the women and children before is because they wanted the US to go back in because that would help their profits or would help the advertisers. By the way, you've seen that Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and all these companies advertise on media, right? We talked about it last week. Anyway, so essentially, we are at this point where No one seems to care what's happening in Afghanistan except for a very few amount of people. And we are not seeing the carnage that we are causing in Afghanistan because we no longer have bodies there, right? As I mentioned in my segment on the myth of sanctions, it all looks cleaner to us, but it isn't. The truth is, tons of people are in danger of dying or dying, and it's a really difficult time of year in Afghanistan. Just because they're in the Middle East doesn't mean that the ground doesn't get cold and arid. So the easiest solution to this, if you really do care, and I really hope you do, is to contact your member of Congress or contact the White House, because honestly, this is something that Biden can do all by himself. He does not need Congress. He does not need the courts. He doesn't need anyone. All he needs is him and his pen, and I suppose a sheet of paper, to take these sanctions away and to show that we're not a cruel people in this country. Why would we, in defeat, cause so much pain and suffering to the Afghan people? We lost. We finally had the opportunity to give the Afghan people their country back. Now, we don't have to agree with what happens there, okay, guys? I'm not saying I agree with the Taliban or whatever, but they're in charge. We agreed to that implicitly by letting them let us out. And they did end up managing things. And then we slapped on these sanctions, and the country is falling apart. This is so immoral. It's actually kind of sickening. And I hope that we turn this around. I hope that we can convince Biden to stop doing this, because we're killing people. And actually, it's hard to get good numbers now, but it actually looks like we're killing more people now than we were killing when we were there. And it's just mind-boggling how cruel and terrible that is. So I hope that you will contact the White House, and that people will put pressure on the White House to undo this, because what we're doing is disgusting and immoral, and it shouldn't be happening.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread and you'll find all of our content. Alright guys, see you next time. Bye for now.